Hi, today I want to talk about the Nikon D7000 and how it's still relevant in the year 2020 and beyond. A couple of days ago I took this camera out with the 50mm f1.4 lens, the manual lens, and I was able to take about 400 pictures. As you can see, one illustrated right here. Very nice picture, and I was very proud of taking that picture with this camera. Even compared to my Sony A7R III, I think this camera is amazing. Let's talk about it. Okay, so Sony A7R III is an amazing camera with its autofocus and 42 megapixel and many other features like 4K. However, when you do manual photography, like using a manual lens, like this one, 50mm f1.4 on a Nikon D7000, wow, it's amazing. I took my time taking a nature picture. I took like macro photography, close-up of the leaves and branches and other thing that's hanging on the branches, bushes, rocks and all that. And this camera, wow, if you take your time to take the picture, enjoying what you're taking, this is definitely the camera I would bring all the time. First of all, this camera is actually about 30 times more cheaper than the Sony A7R III. I got this for a bargain price with a manual lens that was given to me for free from my friend's wife. This lens, and I have a couple other ones, oh man, I just love it because, first I enjoy taking this camera out and taking pictures. It's just amazing. The way it feels as well, the ergonomics of this camera, LCD screen there, long life battery. In fact, the battery lasts, I think I took 400 pictures and there was 5 bar, right? Only 1 bar is gone. There's 4 more left. That tells you how great this camera is in terms of long life, long battery life. The technique, of course, is that I would use the LCD screen for a little bit, and then just to check whether I overexpose or underexpose the picture, then I will use the viewfinder, because as you know, the image is accurate on the LCD, but it doesn't really show on the viewfinder. The viewfinder is just to see if you have composed your shot. It tells you, how the aperture, it tells you the ISO and all that stuff, but it doesn't tell you what the picture looked like until you switch over to the LCD screen, which is why I find this camera a little bit hard to use. However, like I say, I took my time taking the picture, and the technique that I did was basically I switched to the screen, look at the picture that I want to take, and then see if it's underexposed, overexposed on the LCD screen. Then I switch back with a viewfinder and I take the picture. And I would say 99% of the time I got it just right. That's right, perfectly. In fact, it feels very natural after about 5 or 10 pictures. I realized I was able to take control of this camera really well, and feels more natural to me with this camera. The manual focus is amazing too, because I was able to focus on the subjects, and the aperture ring that I was able to control. Most of the time when I do macro photography, I would use f4 or f2.8. But if I'm taking a long shot, a long distance shot, wider angle, then I will actually use f4 to f8, which works really well because everything is in focus. Whereas f1.4, if I'm looking at a close-up shot and I want a blurry background, f1.4 is great. Even f4 is still amazing if you're looking close to an object and the background will blur out anyway. It works well for both. The only thing with f1.4 for this manual lens, the 50mm, is that it's not as sharp compared to if you put it to f2.8 or f4. So you got to know your limits. You got to know the camera and the lens really well. It only took me about 10-15 minutes when I was taking pictures. I realized I love this camera for manual photography. I have full control of my pictures, and I'm going to show you at the end of this video some of the pictures that I took, and I really like it. In fact, I just did a little bit of a color grading, a little bit of adjustment. Not so much. It won't take me like 5 seconds to adjust the frame and the composition and all that stuff, and change a little bit of the color, but didn't do heavy manipulation of the photo. and there we go, it looks really good. Okay, so I have to say, even for the year 2020, and I think even beyond, this is the camera I'll be carrying around if I'm taking or enjoying my picture, you know, of nature. This is the camera I'll use a lot. Another reason, of course, that this camera is really cheap. So compared to the Sony A7R III, so I don't have to worry about like dropping it or anything like that. I got it for like a bargain price, about 30 times more cheaper than the Sony A7R III. And so this camera, you know, I'm like, I'll take my picture without any worry about I'm gonna use up the shutters count. In fact, there's still about 100,000 shutter count in this camera. It uses over 42,000 already, another 100,000 I think on average. I can continue on to take this picture without worry. And you know, when I went out to take the picture, it was a very cold day, probably -5, -6, and no issue whatsoever. That's what I like about these older camera. I'm not saying that Sony A7R III has a problem, but I find that I tried this out in the field. It was really cold, the battery didn't shut off, or the camera didn't get shut off, whatever that might happen in the cold winter. This camera built like a rock. 16 megapixel is more than enough, even if you're doing 4K image on your YouTube, right? For example, YouTube 4K is only, if you do 4K video or you put it into your timeline, it's only going to be 8 megapixels. So this camera can do 16, so it's more than enough. So if you're trying to do a slideshow and showing some picture on your YouTube, this is the camera, perfect camera for combining image and video together. Definitely this camera. Now I wouldn't recommend it for video. For photography, manual photography, this is the camera to bring along. Pretty much, for me anyway, all the time. I have to worry about, you know, the expensive camera. I just know that I'm going to take an amazing picture every time I bring out my manual lens, the 50mm f1.4, and the camera itself. The battery lasting so long that I don't have to worry about anything. Just focus on my photography. And so that's my take on this D7000. Amazing camera, even 10 years old. I will continue on to use it until that 100,000 shutter count goes, and hopefully even last longer than that. All right, amazing camera. Thanks for watching EducateTube.com.